We are back on Morning Line. It's our final segment this morning. Thanks for joining us, coming to you live from the News Channel 5 Plus studios. With us this morning is Councilwoman Sharon. Good morning to you, ma'am, and thank you for spending the morning with us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure. Yeah, we have some more questions as we talk about, what's happening in this city and the police force and racial equality and all of that. Let's go next to Ricky. Ricky, good morning. Do you have a question for the Councilwoman? Hi, Ricky.
Hey, Nick.
Good morning, sir. Go ahead. What's your question or comment?
Well, I'd like to say that I really like to hear Joe when he calls in, because I think Joe really talks a lot about the real truth. I wouldn't want to be a police officer, because right now it don't matter what you do. If you pull your gun out, if you plan to use that gun, you're guilty. It don't matter if you hit somebody or not. If you shoot at them, you're guilty. And I think that the officer that shot that Andrew Delkey, I think he's getting a bad deal, because I think that the man had a gun. He should have dropped the gun. If he didn't drop the gun, all he had to do was turn around and shoot that cop and kill that cop. That is wrong. He needs to drop the gun.
Okay. Councilwoman, I think you would acknowledge, aside from this Delkey case, that there are going to be incidents where law enforcement officers in the field sometimes are going to have to deploy their weapons. You do wonder sometimes with these cases and the scrutiny that comes with it, if maybe at times now police officers are going to be hesitant to do that at times when maybe they really need to. And I'm not talking about a case that leads to a tragic death like some of these cases, but sometimes law enforcement officers need to use their weapons.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. They do. And I'm not saying that, but I do also know that there is a de-escalation process that one goes through. And I understand that Delkey had a gun, and I also understand that he could have, but he's not the sharpshooter as much as the police officer is. And, I hate to get into the weeds of it because I'm not an expert at it, but I do think that in this situation, it seems to me, and I know there are going to be several people with different opinions of what actually happened and how it happened and how it could have happened differently. So I respect Joe and Ricky and any others who have a different opinion than I do. And I think that's what makes the law and the work that is done in law enforcement and the legal system intriguing, because you have to look at all of those and analyze those things in order to come up with something. So regardless of whatever happens, somebody is not going to be happy. And in this case, I hope that true justice is fulfilled and the right thing is done.
Let's take another phone call for him.
In my opinion,
yes.
In this situation, I don't believe that Daniel Hambrick had to lose his life.
All right. Let's go next to Ron, I believe. Ron, go ahead, Ron. Hi, Ron.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Joe had that right to an extent. The police have been trained that way. And the training is one of the things that needs to be stopped. Police officers should use their guns as a matter of last eternity. If they're being shot at, maybe so. But they should look at the area around them and the people, innocent people, that can be hit with those guns. If a person is running away from them, and even has a gun in his hand and is running away from him, let him go if he's not shooting that gun. Basically because they'll get him later. And they should not be trained to, because somebody has a gun in their hand, for them to pull theirs and start shooting. Because of violence, more violence creates more violence. And the police union should be got completely away with, and you have the city council and the mayor to answer to if you are going to be on or have a review board to answer to that is of the public, not of the picking of police department and having the major people. And I would recommend, as far as Davidson County is concerned, is turn the police department over to the sheriff. He has compassion for people. You can tell by the way he talks. And it being a county up there, they don't need a police department. It would be a lot cheaper to operate if they let Sheriff Dan Hall take over both departments and run it as one.
It sounds to me, aside from the sheriff angle on that, which is not going to happen, at least without changing the charter, but he did talk there, Councilwoman, about what you mentioned, de-escalation tactics, if you can find a way, any way, to de-escalate safely without having to deploy your weapon.
Yes, and that is when all of that is done, and you have to deploy your weapon. That's understandable. And I mentioned earlier, Tamir Rice had a toy gun. He was 12 years old. And based on the description that Mr. Ricky said, there was a gun, but it was a toy gun. So again, I think that in situations such as that you can de-escalate. You can use it and let the force of your weapon be the last alternative.
Yeah, I agree. Now, I will say this on behalf of law enforcement. Again, a child, that's one thing, and maybe that needs to be handled differently. But I think you'd acknowledge, too, Councilwoman, some of those toy guns can look amazingly realistic. And, when there's someone who happens to be holding a toy gun, if it's a child, maybe in those circumstances there has to be more discretion. But I don't really blame an officer if he sees a toy gun pointed at him, pulling his gun and firing.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand that. And again, every situation is different.
Sure.
You have to take a piece of it and look at it and analyze it. But we also have to recognize that there has been some wrongdoing. And what we want to do is eliminate that. We want to make sure that we are doing everything that we possibly can that is right.
Sure.
And it will come out right for the officer or right for the citizen. That's the key of the transparency and the integrity of our department.
Yeah, understood. Let's go next to Linda, I believe. We have a call for you from Linda. Hi, Linda. Go ahead.
Nick, I agree with everything that Joe said. Mm-hmm. And another thing, the simple thing is if you don't put yourself in that situation, there's nothing going to happen. I mean, I don't understand the whole deal anyway. I know there's good cops, there's bad cops, but it doesn't just happen to one person. It happens to everybody if it's a bad cop. And I mean, I don't understand it. I really don't. And I'm not prejudiced for sure, because I have a lot of black friends. Mm-hmm. But it just seems like everything's escalating, everything history wants to be tore down. You're not going to erase history. History is there. I don't know why everybody wants to tear it down.
Well,
because that's something we can learn from.
Well, I understand, and that's a separate issue if you want to talk about the monuments and the like. The problem is, and I would imagine, Councilwoman, you would say, bad cops are bad cops, and they're going to cause problems for whoever they encounter. But sometimes, and I'm not saying this is the case in the Delkey case right now or some of the others, there can be a racial component in mind, I suppose you would say, and that your belief is that at times there are African Americans who feel differently about being approached by a law enforcement officer than, say, perhaps a Caucasian would.
And absolutely, I can give you one personal experience. And this was some years ago, and I was in my 30s and had an opportunity to purchase a BMW and I purchased it out of Atlanta. And it was a very nice car, and it was a color of a goldish green, and it had some fancy BBS wheels on it, and it was a really good looking car. And I was actually going out south and made a wrong turn ended up in the Tony Sudicum public housing. And I was lost and trying to find my way. And I look around, and there was a police officer that pulled in front of me, a police officer pulled behind me, and two on each side of me. They actually surrounded me. And all of them got out of their car and came up to my car. And I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? I mean, what's what? And they wanted me to pull out my license and all of this. And they were like, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm lost. I'm trying to go to church. I'm supposed to be singing with my choir, at 7:00, and I'm lost. And I was going to Fairfield Baptist Church, and I made the wrong turn, and I was lost. Now, I look at that situation, and it was nerve-wracking for me, because here I was surrounded by 4 police cars, and I guess it must have been at least 4 police officers. And had I said or done something wrong, then that situation could have gone bad. And I'm not saying that every situation like that happens, but they do happen. That was one of the reasons why I was talking about using the body camera, so the question could be on given the right point of question to the citizen and not to the police officer. Because if the citizen says the wrong thing right off the bat, when the police officer is putting them on a defense. So if the citizen has the right to basically carry the conversation, then the officer is more trained and could respond adequately and maybe keep the situation minimized. But when the citizen is on the defense, I think that's when things are caused and gone out of hand. We all live different lives. We have different experiences, and we have to recognize those things.
Well,
they play a major part.
They shape us.
In things they do.
They absolutely shape us, and I appreciate you sharing your story. I try to, as a white guy, when we get calls from people sometimes on this program saying, well, just don't resist. If you just do what the officers do. And I try to tell folks, and I can't describe it the way you do because you've lived it. You went through a situation where you were stopped for no other reason than driving a BMW while black. And that's it. And I'm trying to say, if that had been my personal experience, or some of our callers who are Caucasian who think, well, why don't you just stop? I mean, think if you went through some of the same things that Councilwoman Hurt's gone through. Do you think you might have a different point of view when it comes to law enforcement if you're treated that way? And I think everyone needs to stop for a moment and put themselves in someone else's shoes. And in general, it's a good idea to obey law enforcement. But can you understand why some people may feel more frightened than others? I may view an officer as a friend, whereas you may view an officer, because of your prior experience, as an adversary.
Oh, no, I view them as friends. Let me tell you, I've also had just the opposite. I had an accident, and a police officer stopped to see what was happening and what was going on. I mean, they took me to my husband's car. They made sure I was in my car, made sure that my car was taken away. I could not find my license. I had my insurance card, had my license and everything, but I was such a nervous wreck.
Sure.
I couldn't get it at the time that they wanted. And the officer said, let me just check the tags. Let me do that. And that's what they did. They checked the tags. They checked everything. And they said, it all worked out. It is her car. She is who she says she is. It's all of those things. And they took very good care of me. As a matter of fact, his name was Michael Douglas.
Okay,
I remember his name.
We have to go to a quick break, but I think you make a good point there. See, so it goes both ways, and you've got that perspective because of your personal experience, which is a good thing because there are an awful lot of very fine officers out there. Let's take a break and be back with another segment right after this. Stay with us.